All right, I'm on my, well, I've been driving for a few hours already, but it's kind of uneventful scenery. But now I'm turning off the main highway, and I'm going now, I don't even know what highway that is behind me, I forget, but Highway 97. I'm turning off of Highway 97, and I'm on my way to Lillooet, British Columbia. Then I'm gonna put you guys in the dash and show you that view. It's some good views along there. And then I'll continue to do it again once I leave there and go up over the Duffy Lake Highway, and that is some stunning views, as long as it's not going to be too foggy up there. But here we go. Enjoy the ride. All right, another day of travel is done. Done. And I'm in the old hometown. So I took everyone, I put the GoPro on, and I flashed it up on the connector. There's the Highway 97, I think it is. It does the length of the province. And then I connected on to Highway 99, which traveled west to Lillooet, and then Lillooet up and over the Duffy Lake Highway and down into Pemberton and Mount Currie. where I was previously living for many years. And there's a couple spots along the way I stopped, and I'll see if once I get this done with this audio, I'm not sure which video I'm going to post yet. Tomorrow, I might use the one with the Duffy light, because that's going to be very interesting. And I think I saw something, and I might have got it on video too. Minor, but whatever. What else? I stopped at a few places. And maybe that'll be tomorrow, and then I will narrate the significance of where I stopped, what I'm looking at, what previously went down there. So I think for this video, it's probably, I'm going to let you guys go on the drive from Highway 97 onto 99, traveling west to Lillooet. Along the way, I stopped once to film some bighorn rams and ewes, a herd of wild sheep, bighorn sheep, along the Fraser River, and I'll probably edit that into this too. All right, so now my time to wind down. I'm going to get up early in the morning. I'm going to hike into one of my favorite hunting spots with my bow, and I'm going to see if maybe I can get a big buck tomorrow morning on the way home. We'll see. Now let's get into hearing some people. And as we sit here, the mainstream news focuses on Whoopi Goldberg and her garbage friends and all the BS that goes on with mainstream news, while meanwhile, the United Kingdom and the criminals in the leadership roles today are escalating long-range missiles into Russia. They are panicking, trying to ignite World War III because they know the peace talks are coming, and it is absolutely disgusting. And if there's ever a time for the people to rise up and grab the bad people and string them up, it's now. It is now. That's my little outburst. All right, bite my lip. Let's get me mellowed out here, and let's all hear some of the people's voices together again. This is titled Logger Sasquatch Encounter. Hi, how are you doing? First of all, I love your YouTube channel, and you may not know it, but you help people get by. Help people by getting them to talk about our Sasquatch encounters. It helps us get this stuff off our chest. I'm a 42-year-old native Sekwepemc. I am a 42-year-old native Sekwepemc from Chase, BC, Canada, in the heart of the Shuswap. I have friends in the Shuswap, and a native friend of mine lives in the Shuswap. I've been hunting and fishing my whole life. I've been a logger for 22 years. I've had 2 encounters with these hairy men, so-called Bigfoot. Encounter, 2015, location Spence's Bridge, BC. Oh, I may have read this. Hold on a minute. This first one was read about 4 or 5 years ago, but this one really had an impact on me. It's one of the ones I never ever forgot. I think mainly because it's where I'm familiar with the area, and it also is, it's like a real life nightmare for me. I mean, I've been broken down out in the middle of nowhere, and this guy really put me there with his predicament. So I'm going to read it one more time. It won't take a few minutes. Encounter 2015, location Spence's Bridge, BC. I was a harvester for a log contractor for a couple of weeks during the night shift. I would usually show up at 3 p.m. and cut trees until 2 or 3 a.m. Now I was geared to go to work, and my boss calls me and says, don't bother coming into work tonight because they're having problems with the alternator on the harvester, and they were trying to get one from finning in Kamloops, so I ended up not coming into work that night. Now the next day, the boss gets a hold of me and says, come into work tonight, we just fixed your machine. Oh, I would like to say that when I worked in this area, I always had that uneasy feeling, like being watched, especially when I serviced my machine after my shift, walking from my machine to my truck at 2 a.m. Anyway, I was cutting in this area about 2 kilometers from where my truck was parked. At about 12 a.m., my machine started to lose power. The hydraulics were running shitty, and my lights were starting to dim. I was like, oh, F. The alternator is effing up, so I started to drive my machine back to where the truck was parked. It only made it a couple hundred yards until it died. No power at all. So I thought I'll just walk to my truck, until I realized I left my light in the truck. There was no way I was going to go walk out of the bush with no light whatsoever. You know how it is trying to walk over fallen trees on the ground, especially at night. You could get hurt. Yeah, no shit. So I decided to just put my seat back and sleep in the harvester. It seemed like I was sleeping forever when I heard a loud thud on the back of the machine. Right away, I just froze. My mind started racing, thinking what that could be in the middle of a logging block with no trees around me. So it cannot be a branch or a stick falling from a tree. Still frozen in fear for what seemed like forever, I hear a sound on the right side of the machine. It's the sound that I'm very familiar with. The noise I hear sounds like how a person would step on a car hood and the hood would be pressed down. Now, as I hear this, my face turns numb. My blood gets cold because this is the noise I'm familiar with when I step up on the machine and walk up on the machine's hood to check the oils and antifreeze. I'm like, what the F could be walking up on my machine in the dark? Could it be a bear or any other critters? But it takes a certain amount of weight to push the hood down to make that thud noise. I'm still frozen. I can't move or start the machine, so I think fast, and I turn the key and put the light switch on and look out the back window. And I hear a loud thud noise. The sound reminded me of how if you throw a bale of hay out the barn and it hits the ground. Not even a second after I hear the noise through the late night mist and the dim lights from the machine, I can make out a bipedal, black, hairy being running away. Holy shit, I almost shit my pants. After I settled down and figured out what just happened, I looked at my watch and I still had 3 or 4 hours until the day shift crew showed up, and I was not getting out of the machine. It seemed like forever sitting in the machine, wondering if the Sasquatch was watching me from a distance, or did it leave? Was it going to try and get me in the machine, or was it just passing by and thought nobody's in the machine and wanted to check it out? I don't know. At about 3:30 a.m., I seen the light of the day shift crew coming over the mountain into our logging block. I was so relieved. And not long after that, my boss drove out to me in the skidder. He saw my truck parked in the landing, no machine, and put 2 and 2 together and figured I was broke down. I know what I saw that night, and it scared the shit out of me. I don't know what was scary, having that thing on my machine or waiting and wondering what was next after the encounter, waiting for the day shift crew to save me. Yeah, no shit, that would have been a sentence, having to sit through that alone. I also have had a close encounter when I was 16 in Karamias, BC on the Chopaka Indian Reserve, but we'll save that for another time. Now, I quit that job that morning, and I never worked night shift alone, ever again. My people have known these beings exist. Well, you know the story. Every time I go to work in the bush, I always do a tobacco or food offering, telling and praying to these beings that I need to work and feed my family, and to leave me alone. Till the next time, Jay. You can use my name if you want. I don't care what anybody thinks, or if they believe me or not. P.S. I have heard a few loggers' encounters also from hand fallers. There you go. Now, after he emailed us again with another encounter, and then he is also our friend, our native friend, who emailed me. He was in Mackenzie with the faller that cut the tree down. Would have been, where was that? That sounds like it was west of Valemont, south of McBride, in those mountains. So it would be a triangle. McBride, Clearwater, Valemont, in that area is where allegedly the tree was cut down. The mature first growth cedar was felled, and there was a large skeleton in the middle of it. And he was sitting with that logger and emailed me again from Mackenzie later on. And there you go. All you guys and gals familiar with equipment, imagine that night. Imagine being in his position that night. I was in that position years ago in Vancouver Island, but luckily nothing happened to me. But that's all I was thinking about, being stuck in the middle of frickin' nowhere all night long during a stormed boot. Well, I don't know if you're still listening, Jay, but if you are, thanks again. Email me again one day too, please. This next one's titled, Hunting Encounter Southwest Montana. Steve, my story happened 3 years ago in a place I've hunted elk in for the past 30 years, so I know the area very well. This is just south of Whitehall, Montana, in the Tobacco Root Mountains. To get back in this area, south of town is a good hour drive up and over a real shitty trail when the hunting starts in any direction. Then the hunting starts in any direction. But this particular morning, I took off by myself to the south over a different ridge. Brown back. First thinking nobody has, has been back there this year, as it's a pretty remote area to hunt. So after not seeing anything, I thought I wasted 3 to 4 hours back in there, and now I was going to get down to one of the only 2 places there is water this time of year. So to set the area up for you, it is open. In looking north and south, you can see 1/2 of a mile. West, 200 yards before the tree line, and east is 30 feet before dense pine trees. Now, this watering hole is a little marshy, so you can see at least which direction the elk come from and which way they took off. So as I was surveying which way I'm going to head out by the elk tracks, Steve, as you've said in the past, these creatures seem to have a sixth sense, and I do believe they give it off as well. As I'm going around this watering hole looking for tracks with my back to the east, closest to the tree line, the hair on the back of my neck stood straight up and then all over. Then I felt this sort of energy, so to speak. I had this sudden rush of a feeling something was watching me. Not somebody, but something. I've been hunting, snowmobiling, cutting wood, you name it, in this area, like I said, for 30 years, and never had this happen to me. All I could feel at the moment was to flee and get the hell out of there, and running was not an option because whatever it was gave me the feeling of being much bigger than me. So I left in a hurried pace. And as I was leaving, I felt like I was being followed for the first mile. I thought I could hear some branches and pine needles crunching behind me and off to the side. And when I would stop, the noises stopped until I got over the first ridge, and whatever was following me would have been in the open. Now I've never been back there again. And I've never told anybody about this, as I'm a businessman in this small town. The only thing I can think, Steve, is when I took off into that shithole first thing in the morning, I stepped into whatever was down there, and it or they followed me out to the water hole, and to make sure I knew not to come back. I never got a chance to see them, nor could I smell anything, as the wind that day was coming out from the west, and that's the direction I was going. And who knows? And who knows what I would have done if I did. Probably shit myself. But I've never been back, nor would I plan on going back. Okay, I think, did you say not to use your name, I think? Okay, I'm not going to use your name. Okay, I appreciate that email, man. No, I don't blame you. Don't feel bad for going back. You got to go with your guts, right? You go with your gut instinct. If your guts say don't go, you don't go. You listen to your guts. Appreciate that send in, man. This next one's titled Bigfoot in BC. Hey, I love your videos. I just have a story to share with you. So I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I worked in the forestry industry for a while here running equipment. And me and my wife decided that I would go out to BC to work to make a little extra money. It was all going great, really. I was in Fort St. John. I was just in Fort St. John. One morning, I woke up as usual at 3:15 a.m. to go down and start my truck to let it warm up, as it was about -30. Packed my food for the day and left. I got about 19 minutes away from Fort St. John, and this block we had been cutting was honestly the furthest I've ever been away from civilization. But that never bothered me, as I grew up in the woods. The logging road twirled between the bases of very large foothills, and it was nice and white. I think you meant white, because it was a typo there. It was about 4:30 at this point when I lit a cigarette, and when I glanced to my left to make sure my cigarette went out the window
and not hit it, I noticed a large black shape flying through the alder bushes. I immediately thought it was a bear. I was only doing 25 kilometers an hour as the road was icy and I was coming into a sharp corner. I turned the light bar of the truck on, and this thing leapt over a 6 foot deep by I'd say 6 foot across in one single bound. And I mean, I had never seen any bear run on 2 feet, and I'd always said, no such thing as Bigfoot. But when I seen this black furry man leap over a ditch and land almost center of a double wide logging road, then leap again and clear the next ditch and down into the thicket on the other side of the road, I knew that it was most definitely not a bear. It shook me up. I was nervous to tell my wife, the guys I worked with, and my children. But to my surprise, my coworkers were not surprised one bit, as they had all seen one in that same area. Wow. End of story. All of them, huh? I believe it. I don't know if you're still following the channel or not, but if you are, I'm sorry it took so long to get your email. And I would like to, if you would email me back, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from your coworkers, and I'd also love to hear more detail of where exactly that was. And we'll see if I was hunting right there recently. And another member of the club, right? Another one. This next email is titled Bigfoot Story. My father and I were catfishing in New River in southern West Virginia in 1993. I was 13 years old. He was in a John boat about 75 feet off the bank out in the main channel. It was about 1 a.m. We could see our camp on the riverbank. We had been hearing rocks roll down the mountainside off and on during the night, which isn't unusual, except for the amount of rocks that we heard. It was on a Wednesday night during the summer. There are usually a handful of people there on the weekend, but it's a ghost town during the week. We were the only ones on the river that night for miles in either direction. And my dad saw, quote, someone, end quote, come down the path on the bank into our camp on the bank. He thought someone was trying to mess with our stuff, so he hollered out, "Hey!" The thing looked up and started wading out into the river toward us. That's when I heard my dad say, "What's this idiot doing?" Then he said, "That's not a man." He always carried a small snub-nosed Saturday Night Special .38 revolver. He fired once in the river, and the thing was still slowly making its way into the river. The second shot hit right in front of the thing, and it stopped. I had the spotlight on it, and it was about 25 feet from us, chest deep in the water. The thing I didn't realize then, but I do now, is that it had eye shine, and people don't have eye shine. That's what my dad mentioned later when he first realized it wasn't a person. The thing turned and went back to the camp and up the bank, and it was jet black. We heard a yell a few minutes later as if someone was partying and let out a rebel yell. We stayed on the river until daylight, which my dad never did. Then we went back to the camp and started packing up. There were footprints, but we couldn't see any toes or anything like that, but the ground was fairly hard for the most part. And on the way out, going down the road, there were rocks ranging from basketball size to the size of tires in front and behind the road where my dad parked. Nowhere else. We've heard stories about Bigfoot on this stretch of river before, but never knew what to make of them. I learned to swim first and hunt in this area, and I've been back many times, but never had anything like this happen again. I'll send a screenshot with a marker showing the location on the river where it was at. I know the spot well. It's where we always camped. I love all your stories, hunting and Bigfoot and all. Glad I found your channel. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I've told this story one other time, and my dad never did repeat it. Talk at you later, and by the way, please don't mention my name, but feel free to repeat the story if you want. Okay, my man, appreciate that. I don't have to share the screenshot. That's your fishing spot. And we don't want to clutter it up and especially attract some absolute maniacs there either, right? And there you go. 2 more members of the club. That would have been a little chilling. Especially have to stay there for the whole night on the boat. So weird. It's so common for all of you. It's so common for all of you to go fishing at night. Nighttime fishing isn't a thing up here where I live. I don't have any friends that fish at nighttime here. None of us. So it's always, and it's obviously very common for a lot of people here, but it's just odd for me to picture going fishing at night. I mean, obviously you guys, I've shared all my fishing with you guys, steelhead fishing on the river or salmon fishing, and it's just hard to picture fishing at nighttime for me. Now, this next one's titled Bigfoot Story, My Bigfoot Story. Dear sir, I first want to thank you for your YouTube videos, and I've watched several shows. When you referred to Dick, and he really is a dick, Cheney on one of your shows, I nearly fell off my chair laughing. Huh? I think there's a typo there. When you refer to Dick, and he really is a dick, Cheney, in one of your shows, I nearly fell off my chair laughing. I love the fact that you also stick up for the folks who are brave enough to tell their stories, but made fun of, just for the sake of what they have not been through, the topics at hand. I'm 57 years young and have a beautiful family of 6 and was primarily a forklift repair person for some 29 years, living now in southeast Utah. My story, which is a story told mostly to my family for reasons of ridicule when told outside of my family. The year was 1968, and I was 7, going on 8 years old and living in Anaheim, California. My parents were going forward with a divorce, and these were tough times. Our neighbors were a beautiful family and of Polish descent. Their father was an Anaheim fire captain and, for reasons I don't know, had a huge orange grove. Let me read that one more time. Their father was an Anaheim fire captain and, for reasons I don't know, had a huge orange grove up in a town called Terabella in Northern California. The best way to describe it was an orange grove that borders the forest that turns into the sequoia forestry. This beautiful family had asked my parents, because of the tensions that were obviously in the air, if it were okay that I join them for the trip they made twice to irrigate the orange groves this man had. Punctuation is challenging, but we'll get it. It was a long trip up from Southern California to his orange groves. They had one of those teardrop trailers permanently at the groves, and I and Janukas, who was their son, and my best friend at the time, would spend the night in a tent very close to this drop trailer. Janukas and I would spend the day playing in the... I'm guaranteed I'm not pronouncing that properly, right? And I would spend the day playing in the groves, damming up water, playing with our toy soldiers. They only had one lamp that came off a utility pole and a battery for electrical uses in the teardrop. Nothing unusual except for I can remember thinking that someone or something was lurking around. But I was young, and I just thought that was it. I was young. After dinner, that was prepared off the fire, he set up. Mr. Polakatus put the fire out and tucked us in for the night. And I can remember like it was yesterday, looking up at the moonlight and that one lamp that came off the pole and just thinking and talking with my friend until I fell asleep. It was early in the morning and I was all of a sudden awoken by my friend crying in a very low but hard cry. I lay there, looked up to find that I could not see the moonlight or the damn light off the pole through the air vent in the top of the tent. And also the entire top of the tent was pulsing up and down at least, 6 to 10 inches by something breathing heavily on it. Whatever it was huge. I lay there listening to my friend. my friend's muffled cries and thinking of what the heck is going on with the moonlight lamp on the pole, and what could breathe so heavy to warrant the tent going up and down like this. Oh, and whatever this was smelled like crap. And just then my friend found brave enough to scream out, "Mom." I laid there, and poof, the moonlight came back, as well as the pole light, and the tent stopped pulsating. We both literally tore the zipper off and ran the short distance to the teardrop trailer. The door swings open, and Mr. Palacatus is there with a revolver in hand. My friend is crying and trying to describe what has happened, to only find Mrs. Palacatus saying over and over, "What are we going to do? They have seen it too." Holy shit. This was in a time where children were not blatantly, sorry. This is in a time where children did not bluntly ask older folks what they meant. Sorry about spelling, but every time I tell the story, I relive this whole thing. The tears in the lady's eyes I'll never forget. What are we going to do? They have seen it too. Mr. Palacatus sat up after looking around with a revolver in hand, and I remember him looking around for tracks in a calm way the next morning. This was no bear, and whatever it was the size of an elephant. Smelled, and I feel it was not out to kill us. And I feel was not out to kill, but was. I don't know, just checking us out. Both Junicus and I never returned to the groves. I hope I haven't wasted your time with this story, but to tell you the truth, after all these years, I feel better every time I tell it. Dick Cheney is a criminal, and you, my friend, are a man of truth and respect. You have my respect, and after watching your videos with my son Aragon, well, I told Aragon, "Son, by God, there walks a man. Yes, sir, there walks a man," and he agrees. May the sun and stars shine bright on you, my friend. Yours truly, Chris D. Schuster and family. Uh-oh, Chris, did you say not to or to use your name? I hate that. I don't think you didn't say not to use it. Okay, man, I appreciate the kind words. And I especially appreciate you sending that in. And I'm super glad that it feels better each time you tell it, because that seems to be the theme here every time somebody shares. Every single person that's shared here has been happy they did. Thank God. It's so weird how the people react to this particular scene, isn't it? I mean, if you got parents in a trailer, kids in a tent, there's a bear in camp, you're going to get the kids and tell them about the bear, and you're going to dispatch the bear, do whatever you got to do, right? But it's just so weird to picture, okay, I'm in the trailer, I'm an adult, the children are outside over there in that tent, and there's a 9-foot-tall hairy dude standing there. Don't say a thing. Right? Just so freaking bizarre. Don't say anything. So weird. If anything, that would make you want to go get the kids worse than anything that we know about. You should. Would me. Anyway, everybody reacts differently. You can't judge anybody. This next one's titled, Sasquatch Ruined Me. Fall Creek, Oregon. Bow hunting, rutting trophy blacktail. Walking old logging roads looking for rut activity, knee-deep snow. Made it back to my truck. Played with my pig grunt tube my friend gave me. I called in a buck, a reverted stud, broadside pass through 30 yards. Sweet. It's dark by now. I drove off the mountain towards Fall Creek Reservoir so I could get cell service. Called my brother and a friend, and we met and drove up together till we could drive no further. Hiked down into the drainage, double blood trail through the snow, walked through the creek up the opposite side. My brother says, "I hear funny noises. It's your deer." No, the deer's dead, double lung. Continuing. Finally hear it, I asked my brother, spotted owl or a barred owl? We continue on. Then I hear a human-like, garbly conversation, and I stop in my tracks. It's now 10-ish p.m. It's black/dark, and I can't see shit. I tell them to turn the hissing lantern off so I can listen and locate, and I hear nothing. But then some light, huffy, whoopy, almost like black bear huffing and grunting. I was a logger back then, thought I was a tough guy, and I said to my brother, "Give me the knife. I'm going to grab by the ears and cut his throat." I wandered down to a bench. I could hardly make out vine maple limbs in front of me. I turned and said, "Hold the lantern up so I could have 10 more feet." I crept forward, only to hear from the ground up inhaling. Sounded like a grouse when it's buzzing your tower flying through the air. With my eyes, I followed the inhaling of breath into the upper branches. I looked hard in the darkness, trying to see. An owl? Then the wolf-like howl that morphed into a blood-curdling scream. So effing loud, vibrating my whole body/chest cavity, causing me to be weak in the knees, and I fell on my ass. As I rolled over, I ate every stump branch until I got to the lantern's light. I could hear this bipedal thing running up the drainage to the top of the ridge, whooping 3 times. Then screaming over and over until I totally lost my nerve and bailed from the area. I've got to be in the truck before sun sets. It ruined any and all outdoor activities. I cannot go into the woods after dark, and it's been this way for 15 years. The mornings don't seem bad, so bad. It's just afternoons and the night. Troy Russell. I don't know how to deal with it. Bigger gun? Question mark. And that's it. That's an unfortunate experience. No mention of the buck. I'm guessing he didn't get him. He must have got it. That really sucks. That'd be tough for me to swallow. Having my game stole from me. Well, I wonder if you're still here with us listening, my man. If you are, email me again, all right? Email me again and let me know how it's going. If anything's changed for you, if your knowledge has expanded from listening to all the people here, and if that's changed anything for you, and let me know, all right? Give me an update. I appreciate you sending that in. This next email has no title. Hey Steve, here's an encounter my wife and I had in Northeast Oregon in 2004 spring bear hunting. The unit we were hunting is Imnaha, which is very close to the Snake River. Big timbered draws with relatively open hillsides, which is an awesome area to hunt black bears in the spring. I have hunted this area many times and never had anything like this ever happen. But this time was different. To say that it changed my thinking is an understatement, and has heightened my awareness whenever I venture into the bush. And to be honest, there is some places that I just won't hunt anymore alone. Yeah, me too. I don't know what changed, but I feel certain areas will give me the creeps, almost like something is watching me. Anyway, here's what happened on that trip. It was 2004, spring bear hunting season in Northeast Oregon. The weather was awesome that weekend, just the ticket to see an old boar or black bear out feeding. My wife and I got a late start Friday after work and decided we would drive up and sleep in our truck until daylight. We got to our spot around 1 in the morning and went to sleep, and about an hour later I noticed that something keeps hitting our truck, almost like gravel was being thrown at it. Well, we parked underneath the large red fir tree, so I thought it was cones or needles coming off the tree and hitting the truck. Made sense to me, and I slowly drifted back to sleep. I'll address this later after our encounter. Around 5 a.m., my wife and I slowly got ready, made breakfast, and got our packs ready for the all-day trip to the top of the ridge. It took us a good hour and a half to get to the top of the ridge and to the great glassing areas where we always see bear. When we got to the top, we rested a bit and had a snack. And while we're sitting there glassing, we hear something crashing and running up the hill toward our direction. My wife and I are sitting at the top of the drainage and can see anything below us, and cannot see anything below us, just timber and heavy brush. And all at once, 4 deer come running by us, so close we could have touched them. Their poor tongues were hanging out of their mouth and were totally not scared of our presence there. I've hunted all my life, mostly deer and elk, and never had I seen the look of fear in those deer's eyes as I did that day. My wife and I joke about it, but it's almost like they were saying, "Save us from this thing chasing me." And this is where it gets a little sketchy, and I'll never forget the feelings I had. So something continues running up the hill, loud as hell, breaking branches, and as it's running, it is literally shaking the damn ground, almost like standing near a train when it goes by. You can just feel it through your feet into your body. I'm thinking at this point that it's a big bear, so I chamber around in and get ready to shoot this thing. And just as it's ready to run out of cover and show itself, it stops dead in its tracks. I couldn't believe what was happening and thought to myself, what stops before showing itself? But it didn't even know we were there. I have to say, in all my life, I've never had this feeling before, almost like I was the prey and something was bearing down on me. It was a combination of utter dread, feeling, and panic. The hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I felt physically sick to my stomach. The only way I could describe the next feeling is like being watched and having you feel hot all over your body. I look over at my wife, and she's almost in a trance state. So I call over to her and say, "Honey, are you all right?" No response. So I do it again, and I get no response. Then I walked over, shake her shoulder, and she looks into my eyes in total fear and says something is watching us. I say, "I feel that as well, honey," and look over towards the thick bush and timber directly in front of us, and she says, "No, there's something behind us." And after she said this, my whole body is running on adrenaline. I took my wife's arm and pulled her along and said, "Let's get the hell out of here now, honey." We're not running, but fast walking up the hill towards the top of the ridge. And my wife says, "What is that rotten smell?" I tell her, "I don't know, but let's get over the other side of the ridge." And just then we run into what can only be called a big pool of dried blood. Probably 3x3, but no animal parts in it, just old blood. I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is going on here, and what is this pool of blood doing right here? I've become aware now that we are being watched by not just one thing, but others. We hurry up towards the top in shaded young evergreen trees, and I keep low, watching for legs and body parts in the broken terrain. We could hear something walking heavy when we were moving, but stop when we would stop. I knew whatever it was paralleling my wife and I, just staying far enough away in the brush to keep concealed, maybe 20 or 30 feet away. I'm really creeped out at this time and remaining low to see if that thing even starts to make a play at us. We finally get to the top of the ridge and can see that the cover that the thing is using for concealment is running out. And just as the cover ends, there is a break between two bushes with the sun shining through them. My reality of what I thought this was in this world and what is not came crashing down that day when a reddish-brown, hairy, upright, walking creature turns and walks through the two bushes and is gone. I just get a cold chill that makes me shake when I think of what I saw that day. And like I said before, I will never be the same. My wife and I talk about getting over the ridge, and like a light switch, everything feels safe and secure again. I still feel we messed up a hunting drive by these creatures, and know there was more than one around that day. When we got down the mountain and back to our truck that day, I noticed that there was not a cone or needle. There wasn't a cone or a needle on or in the bed of our truck. What kind of spooked me was all the tiny gravel and small rocks on the hood on top of the cab in the bed of the truck. I do believe to this day that something was throwing gravel at us that early morning, and it wasn't cones or needles like we first thought. My wife and I never told anyone about our encounter for some time, but recently relived the encounter to my dad, who totally believes us and says he has seen tracks and smelled them in different locations in the Mount Hood National Forest, close to where we are from. Being from a logging and mill family, plenty of folks have seen and heard these creatures for years. Well, here you go, Steve, my encounter. I love your hunting stories as well. Very entertaining. And by the way, would love to get your advice on a good hunting outfitter in British Columbia for goat, mountain caribou, and moose. Thanks for the stories. Thanks, and keep the stories coming. Take care, Jeff Hall. Okay, Jeff, if you're still here, man, email me back, and I'll definitely give you some direction on where to go to get those great hunts. And there you go. 2 more members of the club. What a huge freaking club. Hunting bears. It's funny, right here where I am right now in Pemberton, British Columbia, when I first moved here years ago, I could drive up the valley, and I could see easily, I would see, if I really tried hard, I'll bet you I could see 10, 12 bears a day. Easy, and probably all before lunchtime. And then a friend of mine was the outfitter here at the time. I actually I guided some bear hunts for him, but they always went down Lillooet Lake, where they went guiding. And back when I first moved here, there wasn't too many guys that come up here bear hunting. And if there was, I usually saw them. But for years, you would see that amount of bears. And driving up to where I put that stand in the trees, there was a long, long straightaway on that logging road. And if you could not drive that straight. I think the straightaway was like 3 kilometers long or something. And when you drove along it, there is no way you could drive that straightaway without seeing at least, I'd say 2 to 3 bears at least. And along the road, there would be bear shit on the road probably every 20 yards, the whole strip. And then I noticed after about 5 or 6 years, the bears just started disappearing, like depleting. I couldn't figure it out because humans aren't good enough to do that. They can't, especially up there, it's too thick. They're not good enough to do that. And some people might say wolves, but I was trapping wolves intensely back then. I never found a black bear kill from wolves, not once. And some people would say it was grizzly bears. Same deal. I never found a grizzly black bear kill ever. And if they were doing it, there'd be kills all over the frickin' shop, right? And I never could figure it out. And there's not too many people that spent that much time in the woods as me, hunting and watching the game. But of the few people I did talk to, they noticed it as well. They noticed all the bears being depleted and couldn't figure it out. But I think I got an idea now, myself. I think I got a good idea where they're going. And it wasn't humans, and it wasn't bears, and it wasn't wolves. It wasn't grizzly bears. Okay, moving along. Here we go. Excuse me. What's this? Okay, this is titled Story. Many years ago, early 1980s, I was hunting with a buddy in northwest Montana when we saw a couple of deer running hard. They were about 3/4 of a mile away on an old clear cut. We didn't have our binoculars with us at the moment, but I raised my rifle to look through the scope. And what I saw was an, quote, animal, end quote, running on all 4s after the deer. Then hit a skid trail and was upright, running on 2 legs like a human, but much faster. It was actually catching up with the deer. For a ways, and then back to all 4s. The deer went over the ridge, and the, quote, animal, end quote, was again on 2 legs right behind them. This whole episode took about 15 seconds. My buddy said it was probably a bear. I've seen a lot of bears, never seen them run on 2 legs, though. And I'm sure the, quote, animal, end quote, got his dinner this day, as it was almost on the deer when they disappeared over the ridge. The deer ran a good quarter mile plus during this time, and the, quote, animal, end quote, caught up with them. And it was a long ways behind when we first saw them. DB, Northwest Montana. He just had a couple of quotes on the end of his email. Now that would be something else to see, right? I wonder why they even toy with chasing them. Must be fun. Must be fun to flex. You know what I mean? This just to show how fast you are. I mean, in reality, I have a funny feeling all they got to do is throw a rock, bang him in the head, and it's all there is to it, right? It's funny how many hunters observe these people hunting. One I remember hearing, I don't remember if I read it or heard it, but it stood out in my memory when a guy was in his tree stand and there was some hogs coming along, and then he noticed a female, huge, black, hairy, upright person stalking tree to tree to tree, stalking the hogs, and she squatted down with her legs like a frog apparently, sprang forward with lightning speed and slapped a 200-pound hog, slapped it, and it flew into the trunk of a tree, and that's the impact killed it. And that's how she killed it. Could you imagine sitting in a tree stand and witnessing that shit when you previously didn't even believe in this? Can you imagine? This next email is titled Bigfoot Story. This actually is my father's story. It happened almost 50 years ago in southern Alberta, and the only people that is ever told were family. My parents lived in the small town of Standard, Alberta, and were heading home one evening from Drumheller. They were on a narrow gravel road that winds back and forth as it leaves the Red Deer River Valley. As they came around a corner, there was a large figure sitting on the side of the road by the guardrail. It had its legs dangling down the steep slope and appeared to be looking at something down slope. My father figured that it was looking at some deer due to them being very common in the area. It was engrossed enough that didn't initially notice that my parents had stopped and were looking at it in the headlights. And after about 30 seconds, it noticed them and turned its head toward them. Then it pushed off the edge of the road like a person would when you get off of a tailgate, then disappeared into the dark. My parents didn't see it stand up, so they had no idea how tall it could have been, but apparently it was definitely bigger than a man. My parents got a good enough look at it that they can describe the thickness and color of the hair to this day. And that's about it. I enjoy your stories, especially the ones about Sasquatch. Getting pissed on by a bear is pretty funny, though. Yeah, it wasn't funny when it happened. I live in northern Alberta, and I work in the oil field in a remote area, so I can relate to some of the stuff that you talk about with the animals. Keep up the good work, and I'll try to do my part by remaining subscribed to your channel. Wes. Appreciate the support, Wes, and appreciate you sharing that email, man. Yeah, the subscribing thing, isn't it funny? I've never asked anybody to subscribe here, not once, but so many people have been unsubscribed. I forgot about that. I'd imagine people are still being unsubscribed. I guess you're gonna have to check. Why do they do that? Who knows? I guess they probably do it to all truth tellers, right? Unsubscribing people intentionally is such a frickin' bizarre thing. Anyway. More members of the club. The Red Deer River. I'm familiar with that river. There's a lot of game in there, including moose. The Red Deer River. Who else do we got here? It's endless. It's frickin' endless. I'll tell you what, I must have the world record for the most emails sent in of Sasquatch sightings in the world. I'll bet you I do. This is titled Bigfoot. Hello, watch your stuff all the time. I live in eastern Ohio, about 3 miles from the Ohio River. Just 20 miles south of the Steubenville, Ohio. My grandfather and dad raised me to hunt. Started with rabbit, hunting with dogs, to deer hunting. I killed my first deer at age 10 with a single-shot 410. Quite hilly where we live, nothing compared to what you have, but rolling. I'm 53, and what happened to me has been carved into my mind since I was 12. In 1977, the Ohio Valley had one of its worst years of snow, shutting everything down. I remember riding the school bus, and the snow drifts were as high as the buses. Everything and everyone were just crawling around for weeks. I remember the farmers hauling hay and water to the cows so they could survive. We only went to school a few days a week. We would sled ride across the road in a field at the farm. It took us several days and nights to beat down the track over the hill, and it probably ran about 150 yards. and we stopped at a fence where it separated the fields. One evening, we were riding, and my mother and aunt called us to dry our clothes and eat. Then we would head back out. Everyone headed over, and I said, I'm going one last time. I slid my way down to the end and sat there just a second to reflect on the awesome track we built. And just as I looked out over the pond and down the valley, I noticed a big, black, what looked like a man walking up out of the wood line. And I was stunned. As it came out in the open, it half turned my way as to look at me. Then it turned and worked its way up over the hill, and I lost sight of it. I thought to myself, no animal, cow or horse or bear could even make it that far on its back legs. Plus, I was 150 to 200 yards from this thing, and I know what I saw. It was a man with arms. Because it didn't run up that hill, the snow was too deep, so I watched it 10 minutes as it made its way out of sight. And by the time I got up to where we had our sleds and tubes, the other kids were on their way out, dried off, ready to go again. I told them about what happened, and they all laughed. My mother yelled for me to come in and eat and get my clothes dry if I wanted to go back out. So I did, and I told the grown-ups what I saw, and they told me to quit telling stories to scare the little kids. Plus, that I knew nothing could have walked out of that hollow with the way it was snowed over the past month. I've only told a few people because the people I did tell never believed me. But I know what I saw, and I never ever rode down over that hill alone. And I've hunted it all my life, deer, coon, and always felt like there's someone or something watching. Also, as I hunted that hollow, I found caves down there. And still to this day, I swear, in 1977, I seen a Bigfoot. Every once in a while, I'll tell that story, only to get laughed at. You know what? They can all piss off. End of story. I believe you. You found your people, my man. Nobody's laughing at you here. I hope you're still here listening to everybody, too. Too bad, kids don't think of these things, but too bad at the time you couldn't just drug everybody over there and show them the prints, right? And they probably still wouldn't want to talk about it. All right, I'm going to share one more. All right, you guys, then I got to get my gear ready because I'm going to get up early in the morning and hit those forested hills. This is a title I don't know what to think. Hi, Steve. I've written before about having that feeling of being watched. That grew into a feeling of being creeped out to the point I gave up scouting this particular section of woods and left. I never went back either. I'm a solo hunter and nothing bothers me, but that day changed everything. My head's on a swivel, and I'm aware of what's around me every second now. A few years ago, I was hunting this funnel area between a cornfield and a large pond. I had a climber, and I walked in and got it set up. I've hunted this area successfully many times, and in the dark, I've noticed every once in a while I'll see a very fast flash of light in the woods, sometimes in multiple places. Odd, but I never put much thought into that. But anyway, this one particular morning, I was set up and just settled in to wait for it to get light, when all of a sudden, about 300 yards away on the other side of the cornfield, I hear 5 or 6 large trees being broken off in pretty quick succession. It scared the shit out of me. It was loud as hell. Somebody surely just ran off the road and crashed through the woods. There's one back road that cuts through the cornfields and winds through the woods to 3 marinas and some houses. I immediately called 911 and described and explained what just happened to the dispatcher. And she said there's a trooper in the area and he's going to be there shortly. I gave her my callback number. A little while later, I got a call from the state trooper, and he said he came down and went all the way down the road to the marina, and there's no accident. There's nothing there. I said, that's impossible. He was just as concerned as me, but there just wasn't anything there. I've thought about that morning over and over, and I just can't explain it, unless it was a lot closer to me than I thought, and was something I'm glad I didn't see. I never thought about it being a Sasquatch until I heard other people write in, talking about hearing trees broken off. Thanks for doing what you're doing, giving people a platform to discuss and listen to some of these things the government won't tell us about. Thanks for listening. Steve Douglas. Thanks for sharing, Steve. Appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. And there you go. That should be enough for everybody to chew on for an evening, right? Another handful of members of the Club of No Return. It's endless. Endless. Now what am I doing? I put the Starlink satellite dish and I tied it on the back of my quad in the truck, and actually the sucker worked. It worked. I put the earbuds in my head and listened to podcasts driving home. Currently I've been doing this topic, I've learned so much from all of you. It's changed my life. It's changed the way I think. It's opened up a lot of doors for me. It's led me down more what could be described as rabbit holes, I guess, but it just led me down more pathways to knowledge is what I prefer to call them. And today I was listening to some near-death experiencers, and I was listening to some intuitive people. I listened to some mental health experts today. I listened to a lot of different people that I feel I'm benefiting from, because I like to stay on top of shit. I want to get better. I want to get more aware, and I want to learn. I want to learn everything that we have been steered away from. I guess I'll probably bite my lip, because if I start, I can't very well just start just talking about what I listened to for a whole day. Holy cow, it'd leave us here for another 3 hours. But I'm just letting you guys know that when you dive into this subject, accept what you've seen and learned as fact. Your brain will not stop asking questions. It won't. And then it just leads you to discovering more truth. And that's where I am. I'm learning a lot. One day soon I'll put a video together and I'll share with you what I've learned, because I want to help people. That's another big thing in my life is I've realized that I love to help people. Weird, isn't it funny? It's a good thing. It's healthy. It makes me feel good, so I do it. But it's all about the people. It's all about us. I have like a oil and water thing when it comes to celebrities and people that want to be watched and want to have followings and are lost souls. I consider them lost souls. I got no time for that shit, although those doors have been opened for me many times to go jump into the celebrity world and jump in all the in-crowd podcasts and shit and start, bouncing shit off each other and building up each other's followings. I just don't have it in me. I just want to hear from the people. I want to hear from all the real people in the whole world. That's all I want to do is hear from the people, help the people, and make sure everybody's equal and heard. I love that. You know what? It helps me learn so much more and so rapidly. It's such a good thing. Anyway, probably not making any sense as usual, so I'm going to get out of here. I hope you enjoyed the road trip. This province sure is stunning, isn't it? Rough country. But I'll definitely be back tomorrow. Probably later, but I'll be back. Share my story at howtohunt.com.